Live from the Business RadioX studio inside Renaissance Bank, the bank that specializes in understanding you. It's time for North Fulton Business Radio.
And hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of North Fulton Business Radio. I'm John Ray, and folks, we are broadcasting from inside Renaissance Bank in beautiful Alpharetta. And if you're looking for a bank that's big enough to handle all your needs, but small enough to do it in a personal way, I've found that combination at Renaissance Bank with the clients that I work with, and I think you will too. And here's the other thing. They won't embarrass you on Monday morning. I'm thinking about that because we're doing this show on Monday morning, recording this show on Monday morning, and that's been a bad morning for banks this year because there have been a lot of banks that have had to announce that they're no longer with us. Renaissance has a rock-solid balance sheet, and you're not going to be embarrassed by banking there. So if that's the kind of bank you're looking for with all those characteristics, go to renaissancebank.com and find one of their local offices and give them a call. And I think you'll be glad you did. And guess what? A live person will answer the phone. Boy, that's a throwback. Renaissance Bank, understanding you, member FDIC. And now I want to welcome Tony Van Gelder. Tony is with Van Gelder Financial. Tony, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you here. Let's talk about you and Van Gelder Financial and how you're serving folks out there.
Sure. Yeah. So we have been in existence since the late 1980s. My dad started the firm back in the late 80s, actually when we were living in California. And it has always grown it really from a boutique family feel. So I came into the business about 5 years ago, and right now we're serving roughly 85 families across the U.S. in 18 different states.
Wow.
Including Georgia is one of those. And I'm a certified financial planner, which really just means I'm not going to be just your stockbroker, just your insurance guy, but I'm going to try to bring all sorts of financial planning aspects into that relationship, making sure you're getting holistic advice. And we're serving mostly pre-retirees and retirees, helping them not only get to retirement, but through retirement.
That's terrific. So talk about, you grew up in California.
I did, yeah. So born and raised in Southern California.
Okay.
I'm a Dodger fan, so I don't know if we
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know. I know. We loved getting Freddie Freeman a couple years ago.
Yeah, we hated giving him to you. So,
but so grew up out there, born and raised, and then in 1994 there was a big earthquake in Southern California at 4:30 in the morning. And the reason I tell that story is that we lived in a motorhome for a number of weeks, if not months, as a family of five.
Wow.
While they fixed up our house.
Wow.
And my mom, who'd grown up in Indiana, looked at my dad and said, I can see a tornado coming, but I can't see an earthquake coming. So let's get out of here. So he actually maintained his financial services business, but we moved to Indiana, and I did high school and college back there. So went to Indiana University, majored in finance, and that was the connection to California.
Okay. Wow. So you really beat the rush, though, because there are a lot of folks moving out of California right now, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So why join the family business?
Yeah.
I mean, why financial planning for you?
Yeah, good question. So we talked about it as I was majoring in finance in college. I was talking with my dad. I interned with him, went on a couple of business trips with him, and I just said, I feel like I want to go forge my own path first.
Yeah.
Not only because I think it's important for me, but frankly, I think sometimes clients, I call it the powdered butt syndrome. They can look at you and they can say, you might have some of the educational clout behind you, but you're young enough that I could have changed your diaper and powdered your butt. So should I be taking advice from you? And I think that I spent 12 years in corporate finance here in the U.S., in Singapore, in Australia. And I think that experience was really valuable before coming back to the family business and saying, you know what, I think now I'm ready, having, cut my teeth in a lot of other areas to get back into the personal finance side of things. Corporate finance was great. I learned a ton. But that relational aspect of dealing with individuals and families was something that I had seen my dad enjoy and something I wanted to come back to. So,
yeah. Wow. So you were, I guess, doing some pretty high level corporate work. Just to talk briefly about some of that work that you did.
Yeah. So all of that experience in corporate finance was with different medical companies. So I started with a company called Hillrom up in Indiana after graduating, and they were the ones that actually sent me overseas to Singapore. Worked in Singapore for almost a year, and then they sent me to Sydney, Australia. Worked there, different corporate roles. So some of that was basic, just accounting, finance roles. But then by the end, I was working for Philips Medical Systems. They're big imaging, MRI, CT, X-ray machines. And one of the big issues was that public hospitals don't have the funding to continue to purchase this equipment for their patients. So we would structure what are called public-private partnerships, where we would come in and actually buy all the equipment from different hospitals and lease it back to them, take it from CapEx to OpEx so that they could continue to purchase and maintain that equipment. And I was helping structure those deals for public facilities around Australia and New Zealand for Philips. So that was kind of what I was doing by the end of it. Loving it. Met my wife and had our boys over there in Australia, so I have a close connection with it. But felt like there was a call back home to America as well.
Yeah. So how did you end up in Georgia?
So when I was living overseas, my parents and my brother had moved down to Atlanta area to Georgia in 2015. So when my wife and I and our boys said, we want to go back to the U.S., we figured let's be near family if we're going to do it. So we could have gone back to Indiana, but we chose Georgia because that's where family had moved to while we were overseas. So
gotcha.
That led us here.
Gotcha. And you're pretty active in the Alpharetta area, member of the Alpharetta Rotary. Talk about why Alpharetta is such a great place for you and your family.
Yeah. So like a lot of families, so when we moved to Atlanta, we were ITP, right? We were down in Druid Hills near Brookhaven and enjoying it, but ultimately school brought us up here. So my oldest, who's now in second grade, got involved in an international charter school, and that really brought us up to the Alpharetta area and started falling in love with it almost immediately, 3 years ago, and felt like, all right, this is not only a community I want to enjoy myself, but I want to give back so that it's something our boys can enjoy one day as well. And so Rotary, for me, was a little different than a lot of other networking groups in Atlanta where you feel like you're involved just to pitch your business and get some business from it.
Right.
Rotary's so different than that. And it was really ultimately the motto of service above self.
Right.
We're going to, give back to the community in any way we can. We're going to have fun while we do it. And that's really why I got involved, not only for myself, but hopefully creating a community that they're going to enjoy someday as well.
Yeah, that's terrific. That's terrific. Well, let's talk about your work as a financial planner. So what, lots of financial planners around, lots of financial advisors around. I don't need to tell you that. What distinguishes you and your firm?
So I think a few things. There are hundreds of thousands of financial advisors in the U.S. And sometimes the waters can get a little muddied about what's really that different than someone else. One, I think that sticks out that's important to me, my dad had it as well, is we are certified financial planners. So just under 30% of advisors actually have that designation, which essentially means not only do you have a business background and an undergraduate degree from a reputable university, but you have gone through a number of hours directly with clients, and you've actually taken a very rigorous exam and passed that exam to know all those different areas of insurance, tax, estate, debt management, all the different areas of financial planning that you've got a really well-rounded background in. And so I think that's one area of difference in expertise. And I think another area is that we are completely independent. So you could go talk to an advisor who might start guiding you down a certain path of this insurance product or that annuity, or I've got to sell so much of this.
Right.
Is it in your best interest or is it in mine as the advisor? As an independent advisor, we're fee-based. And so the only thing that you're paying us is the fee for the advice we're giving you. It's very clear cut. And that independence is important to us, that we're not beholden to a specific company or a specific product to have to sell. So yeah.
So when someone sees the term CFP, Certified Financial Planner, when they see that term, they know that CFP, like you are, is fee only. Is that the way it works?
You don't have to be
fee only?
You don't have to be. So you can be fee only. You can be fee based, which means you're mainly fees. But if somebody truly needs, let's say, an insurance product, or you really feel like an annuity is in their best interest, you can sell that and still make a commission, or you can be commission only. There's kind of three different areas.
Gotcha.
You can do any of those as a CFP, but what it means is you can trust that they're a fiduciary. They're putting your best interests above their own, and that's a credo that is central to the CFP designation.
Got it. Folks, we're here chatting with Tony Van Gelder. Tony is with Van Gelder Financial. So, Tony, you are a young guy, and I can imagine that your oldest is in second grade, right? So you're a young you're a young guy, and I can just imagine that you hear this all the time about you just don't have enough gray hair for me, and so forth. So how do you respond to folks that say that to you, and that you need more experience and more cycles in your history, stock market cycles in your history, right?
Sure. I think it's a fair concern, a fair question. A couple things come to mind, and I've seen this play out. So a lot of people say they want to have an advisor that is near their age or maybe even older, right? They've been through, like you said, not just what happened in 2022 or 2020, or for that matter, even 2008.
Right.
But I want to know someone who went through the 2000s and some of the lost decade and the late 80s and the savings and loans crisis, whatever it might be. I want to know someone who's experienced that. And what I've also seen, though, is that one of the most critical times for a client is as they're approaching retirement and then going through retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And typically, if your advisor is the same age as you or older, and you get to retirement, where's your advisor? Well, they've retired or they're retiring as well. And it's one of the worst times to then be handed off to someone new to start to trust and build that relationship as you get to that age. And so in my experience, finding an advisor that's got 10, 15, 20 years your junior, it's not only going to get you to retirement, but through retirement, and is going to be there through that amount of time, I think is really critical versus someone just your age. The other thing I would say is I find when I'm working with someone in their 30s and 40s, I'd say a peer of mine, I find it a little bit harder not to get in their box and say, well, I've experienced, this is how I've done it. This is how you should have done it. And I see that sometimes with older advisors. They think, well, how they did it is how their clients should do it because they're in their 50s and 60s or 70s even.
Right.
And so I think sometimes having that difference in generational gap is actually a positive thing, that I might bring a fresh perspective or a new way of looking at things, but I'm also not going to get in your box to pretend that how I've done or structured Social Security or Medicare or long-term care is how you should. But this is maybe how other clients have done it, and here's some options for you. So I think those are some things that are valuable beyond just, hey, you're younger than me.
Yeah, and I think what people maybe overlook is the fact that when you make a big decision like choosing a financial advisor that you want to take care of your situation, not only today, but as your kids grow and that kind of thing, just the demographics don't work, right? When you're selecting somebody that may be experienced, but they're somebody that's they may not be around. I mean, let's just be blunt about this, right? They may not be around. Most likely won't be around. Yeah. There's you don't want to have to make this decision again.
100%.
10 years down the road, right?
100%. Yeah. And to your point, intergenerational planning, I think, is becoming more and more important. Mm-hmm. Not that it hasn't been, but if you've heard about this great wealth transfer that's going to be coming from the baby boomers to, let's say, Gen X or the millennials.
Right.
If I am, as I say, 15, 20 years junior, a lot of my clients, the value is not only do we have a relationship, but now I can relate maybe a little bit better to the children or even the grandchildren that are going to be inheriting the wealth and manage some of that, carrying on that legacy through those generations and not just be someone who's going to be retiring as well. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's talk about the impact of technology on investing, because there's a lot going on there with robo-advisors, and you might want to explain what I refer to there, what that means. And of course, ChatGPT's out, so let's talk about that one as well, how that impacts the financial advisory industry.
Sure. So I'll start with robo-advisors. I think really that's just a fancy way of saying that you can go online now and you could go to someone like a Wealthfront or even a Vanguard, big name, and they say, we're going to offer you wealth management services and we're going to charge you 0.25, 0.35%, significantly lower than, let's say, a standard 1.5% fee that you might have gotten from a in-person advisor. I think the difference when you look at a robo-advisor is they're just doing that piece. They are just doing wealth management. Coming back to that CFP designation, what's important to me is, sure, I could help guide on how you might be invested in the wealth management piece, but I want to make sure that that's lined up with all the other aspects of your financial plan, your insurance, your estate, the legacy we just talked about with your family, maybe your philanthropic giving, whatever it may be. All of those aspects are important, and all of those things take more time and energy that are built into a fee that we might be charging you. And so when you break down our fee of all those different areas, we're very on par with a robo-advisor, but now you're going to get the human interaction and you're going to get the holistic planning beyond just, I'm putting my funds somewhere, they're invested, can't talk to a human, I'm going to cross my fingers and hope I stick with it. And in a year like 2022, like we just had, it felt a little bit like death by 1,000 cuts. It wasn't a huge drop in any one week, but it just was a slow slog of every time you opened up a statement, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Right.
Oh my goodness. That behavioral coaching piece, I think, is so critical. The psychological aspect of wealth management is something you're not going to get from a robo-advisor or from ChatGPT for that matter. So,
yeah, they don't call you back, do they? Well, what is the impact of ChatGPT on investing? Where's that come in? I'm curious about that.
Yeah. So for those who aren't familiar, I don't know if everyone knows, but this ChatGPT is an online tool that was started by a company called OpenAI. Actually started as a nonprofit venture.
Yeah.
Surprisingly. Think of it kind of like, your Google search on steroids. You're not only going to have a search bar where you type in a question and get a whole list of responses, but you can have a conversation with it back and forth. It might give you a response and you ask it to refine it, give it a response, and you say, okay, but refine it a little bit more. And you're seeing more and more people go there for financial planning advice, which stocks to pick, estate planning, tax advice, whatever it may be. And in my experience, I think that doesn't negate the need for a human financial advisor. In fact, I think it increases it because there's so much noise. There is so much noise out there. And one of the ways I relate this a little bit is when you look at the fitness industry as an example, has there been any shortage of what you could find online when you go and Google what diet you should have or what exercise plan you should put in place? No. It's been there for as long as, but does that stop someone needing someone looking after their diet or a personal trainer to keep them honest? Absolutely not. In fact, it probably increases it because there's so much noise to wade through.
Sure.
And that's kind of how I view this, that I want to be hopefully a guiding voice that's going to work through all of the noise out there and give you some clear-cut answers. ChatGPT can be a great complement to some of that and can maybe dangerously guide you down some paths as well at times. And so having someone, a human you can come back to and talk to about, I think is not only important, but will become more important as these types of things grow.
Sure. So talk about how a conversation with you unfolds. Somebody listening to this interview says, Tony's sounds like a pretty sounds like a professional of value to me. So I want to open a conversation. How does that conversation unfold? How do you deal with that?
So a lot of times it's going to be some sort of referral from a current client. So typical conversations that we have are usually 30 minutes to an hour to kick things off, usually over the phone. And it's a whole lot of listening, to be honest, right? So I'm asking questions about have they worked with an advisor before? If they have, why did that not work out, or why are they not still working with that advisor? I think that's important to know. I want to understand why now, why not last year, why not 2 years from now? What usually there's some sort of event or defining moment that's led them to want to have that conversation. I mean, most people won't talk to their spouse about money, let alone now I'm going to reach out to someone I don't know and ask them some questions. So there's usually some sort of an event that's taken place or something that's woken them up.
Right.
I want to understand that. And then ultimately I want to understand what they want to accomplish. So short term, next 1 to 3 years, what are your goals? Long term, what are your goals? And if it feels like they're looking for a stockbroker, or if it feels like they're looking for a one-off piece of advice, just say, look, I don't think we're probably the best fit, because clients that we have, as I talk about those 85 families or so, average length of time they've been with us is well over 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So it's a business that we want to get involved with for life with clients. And so those first conversations are really just kind of testing, are they a good fit? Are we a good fit? And no pressure from there. Let's keep having those conversations for the next 6 months to a year. If you got more questions to come up, we're never the type that are going to nickel and dime. But as they get comfortable and as we feel that there might be a good fit, then if that leads somewhere, great.
Yeah, this is really should be true, it seems to me, on the client side as well. I mean, if you're making a lifetime decision, you don't want to make that decision in haste, right? I mean, I'm sure you've had situations where you look at a client and the client looks at you, and it's a business love at first sight, shall we say? And I'm sure you've had that, right? But most of them are. You need to take the time and marinate on the decision to get together and work together, right?
100%. It takes a long, in my experience, there's at least, I'd say 12 months, usually 24 months of, I want to get to know you. The other thing I think can sometimes cloud the decision is if they're with an advisor, they don't want to go through that awkwardness of how that's going to be handled to leave.
Right.
And so walking them through that, managing their expectations, that a lot of times we can handle that on their behalf.
Yeah.
If they want to be involved, fantastic, right? If they want to do it all, above board and talk to them first, no problem. But we're not here stating that all the other advisors are terrible and we're
right.
here. But I think handling that side of things takes a lot of the pressure away from people, that they don't want to hurt a friend, or for that matter, even a family member they've been with.
I was going to say their knucklehead son-in-law, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their uncle who tipped them off on Bitcoin or something, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, absolutely. That takes, speaking of marinating, that takes a lot of that, for sure. So what are the big, picture things that you see here over the next, few years that you think, whether it's in the markets, economy, and you're not here to predict anything. So folks, let's just say that, but, just the big picture things that you think people need to be paying attention to.
It's a good question. So I'll give two answers to that. First, to kind of help with your disclaimer, none of this is personal financial advice.
That's right.
But I would say, in general, this is going to be really boring and people might roll their eyes as they're listening to this. I would say your personal goals and what you want to accomplish are so much bigger than news headlines. And I think a lot of clients, myself included, get tripped up on assuming that your question about what's going to come the next 6 months, year, 2 years should guide how I'm going to make decisions about my personal finances. And while that's true to some extent, the majority of the time, sticking to a long-term plan, being boring, and not changing based on the next 6 months, 12 months, or 18 months is the right way to go. And so that comes back to that initial conversation is, what's your goals? What do you want to accomplish? Let's make sure that despite what's going on with global concerns, with interest rates, with inflation, with a presidential election next year, whatever it may be, what's the flavor of the month or the year? Let's not get bogged down in that.
All right.
Now, that being said, if you look at the macroeconomic environment, what am I watching or paying attention to? I would say, one, I am pretty focused on the fact that right now cash is kind of returned to being king. So, 2 years ago, if you were getting 0.1%, you were cheering. And now if you're getting under 4% on a savings account or a money market account, you should be concerned. And I think that for a lot of people entering retirement and coming into retirement, I think even though 2022 was tough for bonds, I think bonds are going to be coming back in vogue from that respect, because as rates hopefully are nearing a top and potentially coming back down in the next year or two, having bonds in your portfolio that are paying what they're paying now is going to be very valuable. So I think cash and fixed income will come back in vogue for a lot of those people that are saying, you know what, I've had a good ride since 2008, 2009, all the way through 2021. I've enjoyed some of that, but how do I preserve that going into retirement? I think those are things to be considering and keeping a watch for, as things have changed.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Good words from Tony Van Gelder, folks. He is with Van Gelder Financial. So, Tony, let's talk about the types of clients that you work with. You mentioned clients that are pre-retirement, thinking about retirement, and going into retirement. Any other descriptors around that you want to add?
Yeah, so I'd like to call it, from a football analogy, if you're in your red zone, right?
Okay.
Right? If you're 5 years pre or getting close to it, I think that's an important time. Don't wait to retirement to reach out and talk to someone. I think second to that, and I'd say 90+% of our current clientele has a huge desire for philanthropic giving. That's something that I'm super passionate about. I've been on this podcast before in other areas around that topic of donor advised funds, charitable giving. That is something that has been really true across the board with our clients. So not only approaching retirement, but they've got a philanthropic desire there. And I think the other thing that has just developed since moving back to the U.S. that is a pretty unique niche is people that have had experience overseas and are coming back to the U.S. and reintegrating or integrating for the first time and trying to understand the complexity of our financial system. It's something as simple as how a mortgage works here compared to overseas.
Right.
That has been something that has been a huge growth for our business, is providing that guidance and potentially how they interact if they ever go back overseas for retirement, or if they stay here, and how they're going to structure their investments and assets has been a real key. So those are two main areas: retirees with a philanthropic focus, and international expats that are here to stay or maybe returning back overseas in the future. Got
it. So I would love it if you could, and I think our listeners would as well, share a success story. You don't have to mention names, of course. You're in the confidentiality business, but just a situation that helps illustrate the great work that you and your firm do.
Yeah. So coming back kind of on that philanthropic standpoint, a lot of people, and rightly so, as they're working, they're chunking money away in their 401k or a traditional IRA, as they should be. And it's growing great. They get to retirement, and this little thing crops up called required minimum distributions, where the IRS says, great, we love that you've saved so much. Now we're going to make you take a certain amount out every year. Used to be at 70.5. Right now it's 73. It's going to move to 75 by 2033. But as that happens, as that change occurs, people are sometimes blindsided that all those required distributions are taxable. They got those tax deductions along the way, but now they got to pay taxes on the way out, except for a couple of different ways to structure it. And one of the success stories, we had a client out in California, married couple in their 70s. they are doing just fine on their pension and Social Security income and accomplishing what they want. And so this extra required income that they have to take is going to be taxes they have to pay that they're going to take in and probably turn right back around and give to a church, a charity, or something that's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
You can structure, and what we did with them is we structured qualified charitable distributions. And you can do this up to $100,000 of your required distribution from an IRA or 401k.
Mm-hmm.
And you send that straight to a church or charity of choice. It doesn't come to you. It doesn't have the IRS tax at first. You send it there tax-free, and it doesn't count towards your taxable income for that year. And it was just a way for us to be more intentional about their giving, something they already would have done, but it was a huge tax savings for them along the way as well. So for me, it was you hit two birds with one stone, really, in that giving and also that tax savings for the client. And a lot of that structure and what lights a fire under me is making sure that we're not only doing that charitable giving, but if we're getting a tax incentive while we do it, why not?
Yeah, absolutely. And if these required distributions are big chunks, like you're talking about, up to 100,000, then can you set up a donor advised fund and put it in that donor advised fund?
It's a good question. So with qualified charitable,
sorry to get in the weeds here, but
that's all right. With qualified charitable distributions, you cannot. Those have to go straight to a charity or a 501c3.
Got it.
But donor advised funds, separate to that, are certainly another very powerful tool to not only create a legacy with your giving, but get a tax incentive as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. If you want to learn more about all this, the weeds that I just got into, call Tony. And that's where we're going to get to the most important question here is how folks can get in touch and learn more.
Yeah. So two ways. You can get a hold of me, 404-854-4746, or visit us online. We're at www.vangelder, VANGELDER, VanGelderFinancial.com.
Tony Van Gelder, folks, Van Gelder Financial. Tony, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming in and sharing your expertise with us. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Absolutely. Hey, folks, just a quick reminder. If you've got some dysfunction in the back office of your business, whether that's administrative task you're spending too much time on, or maybe your bookkeeping system is a Nike shoebox and you just need something better, and you do. The great team at Office Angels has a solution for you. They have a whole team of angels that fly in and they get the work done that you need to get done in order to restore joy to your business. And they do it on an ongoing or as needed basis. And I know of the great work they do because they do work for me. I could not run my business without them. So go to officeangels.us to learn more, or better yet, just give them a call and let them know that we sent you. You can reach them at 678-528-0500. That's 678-528-0500, and let them know we sent you. And a couple of quick things as we wrap up here, folks. I'm releasing a book later this year, 2023, called The Price and Value Journey, Raising Your Confidence, Your Value, and Your Prices Using the Generosity Mindset Method. If you're a professional services provider, you might be interested in this. To learn more, go to pricevaluejourney.com, sign up to receive updates on that book. You can find more info there. Also, a big thank you to our listeners. We're coming up on show number 700 from North Fulton Business Radio. We've only come this far because of you. You continue to support the show, and one of the ways you do that is by following us on social media, subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast app, and sharing the show. So please continue to do that work. That helps us fulfill our mission as the voice of business in North Fulton, but more importantly, it shines the spotlight on the great guests that we've had over the years, like Tony and the other some 1,000 or so guests that we've had on this show over the past 7+ years. So thank you for your support, and thank you for shining that light on the great business leaders in the North Fulton area. So for my guest, Tony Van Gelder, I'm John Ray. Join us next time here on North Fulton Business Radio.